Good afternoon, Marcos. It's evening for you, afternoon for me here in Orlando, Florida. So my name is Dr. Tony Prensa. So I had this program meeting with leaders around the world. I came across with Marcos because in browsing LinkedIn, Ricardo Viana showed your book about leading projects with data. So I was curious about that. So I ordered the book and said, I need to talk to Marcos. So let me see if Marcos can make it and be here in the program and talk to other people about what is the leading projects with data book is about. So I will gonna leave you, Marcos, to introduce yourself so people know who is Marcos Glowasz. Is Glowasz. That's the
Glowasz, yes. Thank you, Tony, and thank you for inviting me here. Really glad to be here and have a chat about my book. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Germany. I live in Switzerland, and I have a relatively long project management career. I used to work in large corporates, also other organizations, but mainly in financial services for about 15 years right now, and mainly in compliance areas. Did run large programs, and they were all, as I used to work in compliance, as you can imagine, that's relatively, I mean, it's quite data centric. There's a lot of data that has to be handled there in compliance programs. And that's where I came in touch with data. And that, I started thinking about, okay, I mean, there's a lot of diligence around data in compliance areas and financial services, really advanced and, as I said, diligent programs like data quality programs and the whole data processing and data management elements, etc. Because otherwise that could cost actually a lot of money if that wouldn't happen this way in banks, for example, right? So that's where I started thinking about, okay, this eventually, I mean, when you deal with data and you also use more advanced methods like analytics as it happens there, then this is mainly to get better in decision making, right? In financial services, that would mean like, do I want to onboard this client, or I don't want to do that, right? So there's a lot of diligence around getting the right information in place to make the right and informed decisions. So how can we do this in project management? That was my thinking, and that's where I started researching and stepping into this whole area about data and how can we actually leverage this for the project management space. And here I am. I wrote a book, as you are showing, Leading Projects with Data. That's my book. That's kind of the result of my research, which is not a technical book. It is actually this, what I have identified as a layer before we even start talking about data analytics and AI, ChatGPT, all very popular and trendy right now. Everybody wants to just jump right on this. But there is something beforehand, which is more the cultural element. And that's what my book is about.
Yeah, so one of the things that I also was curious about your book and what is the content. So you mentioned one important things here, and you said the project success rates are going from bad to worse. And that is a very strong statement. Another thing is that your book is just in time. So we get it when there is a revolution, I would say, in terms of knowledge and the project management career, project management offices, because the artificial intelligence emerged now, because artificial intelligence is not something new. But I would say with the pandemic, COVID, and everything, it's like people get more creative. And so, okay, artificial intelligence, so we can repurpose the comes artificial intelligence to be better in everything we do. There's a lot of noise in the project management landscape about AI replacing project managers.
Yeah,
So that's very interesting because artificial intelligence works with data. If you don't have data, so no intelligence. So the
correct.
knowledge is reflected in all the histories that we have accumulated everywhere, huge amounts of data everywhere. So I'm
Mm.
gonna start asking a couple of things. So I haven't completed the reading of the book, but I have some good portions. So I'm gonna ask based on the outline that you have in your book. So some of your idea when you said, for example, so let's start the need for innovation. When you have in your book and you have one chapter is dedicated to explain the need for innovation. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, innovation is obviously a broad topic. And when I say innovation, it's not like that we have to just bring a new technology and these kind of things, right? Because as I said just before, right, and you mentioned it, right, there's AI and it's very current, which gets basically enforced by the whole ChatGPT hype. But when I say innovation, I actually mean it's more a mindset thing, right? So that people think differently about not only improving things, but exploring things. So there's a difference in my view, right? So when we improve things in project management, we take basically the basic principles of or processes of project management and refine them. We become a little bit better with how we actually do, for example, project scheduling, right? How we estimate a few things, right?
Okay.
And this kind of things. When we innovate, this is kind of even a paradigm shift, if you will, because we're bringing in some new thinking, right? Where people have to change things. It's like when we came up with the agile practices.
Right.
It is agile in itself is very different from the practices that we had before, right? Because there are different roles. The whole project life cycle is kind of affected, or how we actually run this in these iterations and sprints, etc. We in the traditional way that wasn't there, right? So then came agile in, and people had to rethink stuff, right? They had to think how does that work, and how do I actually do this? So we're actually innovating the whole space to actually use additional practices.
Right.
So coming back to my book, and what I mean by the need for innovation is, I believe that project management is kind of stalling when it comes to making progress, right? So, and then you mentioned it before, the success rates are really low, and that's actually a fact. I mean, I used to work in IT or technology projects. That's really looking really bad because that's like around 40% maximum of success rates. And that's not for the last few years. That's basically forever. It's since they started recording this, I think at the end of the 1990s, we have these kind of numbers.
Right.
And even that the agile practices came in, which affected primarily technology projects, right, in the beginning, we are still there, and it didn't really change, right? Actually, my theory is that if we would, I mean, agile is good, but if we wouldn't have brought in agile practices, we would be really rock bottom. But that's so much about product success rates. But what I think is a problem is that if you think really about it, what happened in project management, we haven't really done much over the, I mean, I don't know how long, right? I mean, agile practices came in like over 20 years ago, right? That's where they came into the picture. What happened since then?
Yeah.
Not much, right? there's nothing happening. So when I say there's a need for innovation, it's a mindset thing. It also doesn't mean like, oh, right now we have AI or we have data analytics, etc. So bring this in and then we are good for the next 20 years. No, that's not what it means, right? It means we have to change actually the mindset that we have to constantly explore things, right? Today it's data analytics, right? Tomorrow it's AI, and then something else comes up, right? We don't know. We just need to explore things. We cannot stand still. So it's the dynamic needs to happen, right? Because I mentioned it before, I worked in these areas which are very data centric and data driven. They're going all the way up, right? And so if we don't go with them, then there's a gap, right? And that's already happening today, right? So innovation needs to happen constantly without having just a 5-year period and then we look at frameworks again and this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, you said, well, innovation is the same thing that PMI is telling us about, that we need to change the way we do things, the way of working. So when you mention innovation, it's more about changing the mindset. It's not necessarily creating new things. Sometimes when people hear about innovation, they think that you need to create new things. But what PMI wants to say,
that's not necessarily
flexible, like you mentioned, we have this technology with a lot of organization because the technology allow us to do it. So we have, and we don't have problem with communication and collaboration globally because we have internet, but we didn't have that before. But now we have it with great capacity. We can have this conversation without any interruption because we have the power. So internet, the super highway that can transmit data very fast. So the same thing with data. So we have been accumulating stories in everything. So I work in bank too. So I'm coming from the banking industry. So millions or millions or billions of transactions that have been accumulated. So we have a lot of story there. So now we are using technology to exploit that the data. Like we're using artificial intelligence to exploit the data. So I have another question. So when you are talking about data, so how do you envision using data analytics and project management? Why you think they are combined? So what the benefits of focusing on data analytics?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to what I said before, right? With the product success rates, something needs to happen, right? And it is, I mean, it is obvious that it must be something around data because everybody talks about digital transformations, becoming data-driven. These are the trendy terms. Everybody knows that today, right? When I mean, you hear digital transformation, you hear artificial intelligence, becoming data-driven. It's all over the place, right? And you mentioned it also that you know with the pandemic, etc., this accelerated this whole thing because I used to be when the outbreak was right of coronavirus. I was working in an organization, a large corporate organization, and they had to send home like 50, 60,000 people from one day to another, right, to work from home. And then this whole concept changed. And as we know, everything became, you know, more digitalized, right, much faster than before. Everybody turned to Zoom meetings, etc. And believe it or not, before COVID, I didn't even know that Zoom exists, right? I used
a lot
some,
of people didn't.
and Zoom became very popular, right? So everything basically went into the digital direction, which means it has all to do with data in the end, right? And then everything got accelerated with that digital transformation. And again, right? I mean, data, it's not only for the last year or two in place, that's already for quite a while. And as I said, we have this, just to give an example or some comparison, right? That's where I actually came from, and that triggered me actually stepping into this whole topic, is that my work in that compliance areas and the work with data that happened there, right? So the data is enormous. I mean, the amount of data is enormous, right? It's a lot to handle. And we cannot, I mean, we have that actually every single day. You know, we have our smartphones, I have a smartwatch, right? So everything is data, right?
Exactly.
And that means everything becomes faster. So, you know, I mean, you know, right now we're actually talking, that wasn't possible before, right? To have actually this, you know, you chat me, do you want to come to a Zoom meeting? And a few days later we're sitting here, right? So everything is becoming much faster than before.
Exactly.
And that happens in organizations. They need to obviously also catch up and digitally transform. Everything accelerates. We are living in a VUCA environment. You know, there's a high speed, and then also automatically a high volatility. Everything is changing. Messages are changing very fast, right? And so then imagine, where is fitting project management in all this, right? Obviously, we have to keep up with all this. We have to do the same thing again, right? Because we are delivering. I take always that same example. I'm working a project in compliance. I have to deliver to my compliance business. And they are all the way here with data because they cannot do anything. They must, right? They're actually mandated to do so. So they are very fast. They have a very increasing demand. The requests come in like crazy, right? And then we are sitting in project management and are just operating the very traditional way forever. That's not going to work, right? So we need to actually be at eye level with them. And that means we also need to upgrade. And it obviously comes handy because our success rates are really not good. So we need improvement. And why are projects actually failing? Because we are making the wrong decisions. That's what it is. And then we need to get better. And we are naturally bad at decision making or planning. Human beings are not designed to actually plan projects, believe it or not, right? We just try our best to actually get there, but we are far from being good. So we need help. And that's where data and analytics come in, to actually, where we can use facts from past projects. How did that work there, right? And basically you collect data, you collect information, you get a second, a third, a fourth opinion, which all comes into your whole decision-making process, and your decisions will become better. That's ultimately what it all is about.
Okay, so I have like a combined question on different topics that you have in your book, Leading Projects with Data. So I'm a project manager. So the time that I saw the title of the book is that Marcos is discussing about how to manage, let's say, data analytics project implementation. So, or data warehouse, because now people, they don't talk about data warehouse, but because I had too many years working, so I have seen a lot of transition from different things: data mining, data warehouse, business intelligence, but everything was about managing data. But can you explain the audience, what do you mean by leading projects with data? It's about what I need to do. So I am a project manager, so you're telling me, oh no, you need to manage the projects using data. But what do you mean? Say, I need to use the methodologies, the approaches, agile, or hybrid, or waterfall. So what do you mean by that? So people can understand.
Good question. So I mean, deliberately, I've chosen not to name it managing projects with data, because that would mean, to go into the details or the technical details, how to actually leverage analytics, data analytics, and the techniques and the methods around this to actually, yeah, make use of data. And then, yeah, you would learn in such a book all about, you know, data wrangling, etc., and selecting, collecting data, and making all your conclusions out of it. So basically the technicalities around this, right? I don't think that this is really something that would be new. It might be, it would be, or it would look like new in the project management space, but effectively you can take any data analytics book out there, and that would explain that to you, right? How that works, right? There's nothing different really, except of course the data and how we produce those, right? But that's exactly where I thought it needs to be actually leading projects with data, because I realized when I started looking into this whole topic about how to leverage data, etc., in project management, I actually made the same mistake, and probably many do. Is like, oh, AI is all there, right? That's, I can use that, and I push that data analytics, etc., and just think of it like there's some technology, and just I take it and implement this, and it's going to work. Right. And the next day, basically, I mean, obviously exaggerating a little bit, but you know, the next day it just spits out like insights and recommendations for my decision making. It's not going to work, because, you know, where's the data coming from, right? And then everybody would say, yeah, I mean, it just takes the project data, what's lying around there. Who's producing the project data? That are those project managers, right? So then think really good of how are you actually producing your project data. Look at your project schedules, look at your lessons learned, look at your stakeholder maps, and whatever you're producing, right? How good is that? And if you're really honest, I mean, I'm talking you, meaning like project managers, right? If you're really honest, then you would say it's either incomplete, it's not transparent, it is probably not truthful, there's probably even some lies hidden, right? And mainly it's incomplete, right? And why is that? Because we talk a lot about success stories, now how good projects, whatever projects we have delivered that were successful, and we have all the details, and we're obviously proud of this, right? And share this, right, with the wider audience. We don't do that with failing projects. Everybody, I mean, me and myself, you know, I've ran projects into the ground somewhere at some point, right? Of course, everybody did in the past, right? Nobody is perfect, right? Exactly. And we all learn from this, right? But we don't like to talk about this. We definitely don't want to stand in front of each other. I actually failed this project, and this and this and this I have done to make it fail, right? Nobody would really want to do that. No. So that's the first barrier, right? Because then you don't get the full picture of what actually is going on in your projects. Then you have other things. You apply workarounds, right? In projects, you have a whole layer of shadow working. That's the proper term for this, which is like workarounds, or you know, you get some favors from some peers, etc. And you never will put this really into a plan and detail this and digitalize that data. So you won't have that data. It's just missing, and that means you have incomplete data. Not to mention that whatever we produce on data, like schedules and all that stuff, once the project is over, usually that ends up somewhere on some SharePoint or some file share anywhere, in some all random formats. Some use Excel sheets, others use MS Project, others use Jira, whatever, all different methods, all mixed, right? Then how do you want to actually make sense out of this, right? So the data is all there, except of course this layer that I mentioned that is more like based on this
it's all about
barriers.
it's all about curiosity, the imagination of the
That
person
comes on top. Yeah.
that work in the project. So it's interesting because you mentioned you don't talk about managing projects with data. You're talking about leading projects with data. And you have
Yeah.
a subtitle that the subtitle read as overcome behavioral and cultural barriers to unlock the hidden values of data in projects. So it's more about what you was mentioning when you talk about innovation. It's more about a mindset. It's
Yes.
more a culture that you need to embrace the how to do things differently. So as you are talking, so you are describing what PMI is embracing now, the talent triangle. So you talk about innovation, that you need to change the way of working. You're talking about understanding the data are there, but understanding data is more related to business acumen. So
Hmm.
it's like everything is combined.
No, that's yes, that's one layer that definitely is a direction that needs to be taken. But my point is really, in addition,
Mm,
that when I said I also made that mistake in the past, because I heard that from many people. Like AI is right now the topic of the hour, right? And then how can we use this? How can we leverage this? And I heard that so many times from people that they would like to go to the next store and buy some tool off the shelf, implement
oh,
that thing, and there you go, right? Or just think like just plug this in. Maybe we need some 3-day training course on whatever, data literacy or whatever, and we are done.
right.
And we just take it. No, it doesn't work. It's not happening like this, right? Because you have something in before. You need to actually get familiar with data first. You need to actually get your, I called that recently in a chat I had, the driver's license, right? I mean, data literacy is really the driver's license to actually get around with data, analytics, and eventually also AI. If you don't have that, then don't even think about this at the moment.
Mm,
First, you need to actually get up to speed, understand, who is going to implement AI. And let's say, I'm saying, Tony, you're running project XYZ, right? And you want to take a decision that, for you, it's like 99% clear that this is the decision to be taken. You have, I don't know, estimate, whatever, right? You name it. And then comes AI along and tells you, no, Tony, I have a different opinion. Then you say, no, I have 30 years of experience. So, AI is fresh, new, right? Cannot know
right.
this, right? So I just disregard this. And your whole concept about using data and AI is just down the toilet if you do it this way, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean that you have to follow whatever data comes up with in terms of recommendations or analytics or AI is recommending, but you have to consider it. It's a stressor. Right?
Exactly.
It just challenges you, right? So I think about this like you have to start thinking. Okay, maybe I have some thinking like some old mental model that I used for applied for I don't know how for the last 10 years. Maybe
Exactly.
that became outdated, right? It probably is outdated, and I have to rethink stuff. I have to just consider other ways of working, and that's what it's all about. So you need to get really the basics done of questioning yourself and also data and people around you, critical thinking, and curiosity. You mentioned it, right? And you have to be creative, right? And this is all what comes actually in the package of data literacy. And you have to actually tailor this to the precise challenges in project management. And then you can actually really, you have them basically the foundation to go further, right? Instead of just going from 0 to 100 and say, yeah, I'm just, we're just becoming data driven right now, because that's the same thing. I mean, conceptually, that happened with agile practices in many organizations, where just someone at the top mandated people to say, to go agile, right? We are agile right now. You are not allowed anymore to use anything else than agile, right? I was in such an organization where the CIO mandated everyone to use agile practices and the agile methodology, right? And you were not allowed to do anything else because it needs to be an agile organization. Nobody understood that. Nobody bought into this, and people didn't understand even the agile concepts. So what did they do? They just set up some daily stand-ups, etc., and thought, oh, we are agile right now, right? And this is complete nonsense, right? So you need to first really get a buy-in. You need to understand how that works, and you need to get the basics done, and definitely you need to get an understanding what actually is the precise problem you want to solve. And with this, you can actually tailor your whole journey towards, in this case, using data and analytics.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. So you, in your book, also discuss a lot about business value. So how do you envision adopting this mindset? Let's talk about not techniques. It's a mindset. Adopting this mindset or leading projects with data will help organization in business realization, benefits realization of the investment they do in projects, and also how that will help me as a project manager. So the organization see me as a value-added generator.
Good point, and good question. So, I mean, I mentioned this, I always take that example, so this compliance errors, right? And that's where I've seen this kind of just in front of me, where there was a gap which is widening because, here are this fast pace of change that we call it, right? So the changes come in or the requests come in, we have to change this, and then, we are obviously all have these agile practices in our disposal. So we can actually be agile enough to actually change directions, right? Because nowadays, whatever project you start, there will be always a change in between. I mean, that's probably everywhere already a very common scenario, right? So that's where we say, yeah, we're agile, etc., right? And so we have this in place to actually react to this volatility of the business, right? But it's becoming so fast that we cannot just be agile and just say, okay, we have that process and that flexibility to actually change direction. The question is, where to? What direction are you actually moving to, right? So you cannot just say, I'm agile, and so I change direction, I go there, and just and nowadays, obviously, you don't have time anymore to really analyze if that's actually the right direction. So that's where data comes in, because you can get to data-informed decision-making, where, as the name says, you get actually informed and sound decisions in the end, right? Which means you get that much faster than you would without these techniques and practices, and eventually also AI will be a big help. So you can actually make faster decisions, and they're even more accurate, or at least the chances are very high that it's actually accurate decisions. And that's where this gap would close between the business and project management. So to answer your question, is that's where project managers or projects in general, they can then focus again on really serving the business instead of just running from firefight to firefight and just making sure that on time we deliver this. And this became kind of the priority, right? We have to deliver fast, so we have to deliver on time, etc., right? Just check this off. And this is an output-focused mindset, or way of operating, right?
Exactly.
We should actually rather think, is that actually of value what we are producing? But we don't even have time to think about this. We just want to get this off our radar because the next change is already waiting, right? So we don't have time to do this. But this is a broader mindset change because it has to do with organizational culture, where it should not be like enforced with these goal settings, where people are mandated, this year you have to deliver this, and that, right? And then if something changes along the way, then maybe your goal setting is wrong. And in other ways, you may actually just deliver something because it puts you on the list for promotion, for example, right? Then people actually enforce this, although then now this whole thing is useless. And in my book, I have a few examples, which actually from my own experience and what I've observed and also what I've seen with clients, right? Where this is happening, where projects actually conducted, delivered, everybody tapping on the shoulder, and then we have implemented a certain software tool, developed this, all implemented in use, and a year later it was dumped because it was just useless, right?
Yeah, it
doesn't make any
lot
sense,
of focus on outputs, no outcomes.
So exactly. So you have to think about the outcome. You're right. So this is really where project managers, they have actually the role not only to deliver on time, actually that actually goes even lower right now in priority. It's more of to deliver value, business value, and be kind of a strategic partner, right? And of the business. And we actually should use data and analytics to predict things, right? To predict risks that are coming up. And risks are not only negative things like threats or disruption of any sort. These can be also opportunities, right? With these capabilities, we can actually inform our business partners, this and this project we have here, I don't know, let's say, for example, we have technology opportunities here, right? Which wasn't really considered by the business, right? And we inform them basically. And this way it's actually, becoming, a strategic partnership, if you will.
Right. So one thing that I found interesting in your book is that Antonio Nieto, he endorsed the book and he wrote something like, it read like this: if you are a project leader or eager to learn about the future of project management, I highly recommend reading this book. So what you are discussing is like everybody is discussing. So I'm gonna have Ricardo Viana next week. So we're gonna talk about the next generation project management. So it's like everything is combined. So you bringing one piece of the pie. So you bringing about the mindset that you need to be changed, and you need to be data driven. Everything that you do should be data driven to make those informed decisions in projects, in portfolio, whatever it is that need to be based on facts, no ideas.
Yes.
No.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I was just watching today actually a presentation there of Ricardo and Antonio. They're talking about artificial intelligence. Really great what they wrote up there in that article there for Harvard Business Review. And I mean, my point is really like, of course, I mean, we cannot avoid this, right? If you want or not, you will be exposed to data analytics and eventually AI. It's just not, you cannot just stop this, right? If you think Ricardo mentioned that today, right? If you are actually really not into this whole AI topic, right? And I mean, if you're young and you're not in AI topics, then you're probably in the wrong. I mean, then something is, you have a problem. That's what you mentioned, right? But I mean, we get exposed to this, right? And we cannot avoid this. It's like if you don't want to use data and analytics, or you don't like it in your project management space, then it's like you dump smartphones. You go back to the old clunky phones, right? If you want this, great, it's your choice, right? Or you don't want to use, I don't know, Netflix or whatever, right? Or you don't want to use Google, right? You can do all this, right? It's your choice.
You can go back to history.
Exactly. But I mean, in project management, you have to just keep up, right? Because the business functions or our project customers, they expect that, kind of, right? It's like I always compare this to, when our business partners or our project customers, in the Formula One season, every season they have like a Ferrari or something, or Mercedes, right? Which actually where they tune the engine to get even a little bit a little bit faster than the competition, right? And it's such a powerful engine, right? And then who's delivering this upgrade, right? There's some team obviously does that, right? So I see it like when you think about project management or maps this, right? We have a business or business partners, they run a Ferrari that they need to tune to become a little bit faster than it is already. And then project management functions come with their old slow cars, or even maybe just the horse carriages or something, right? That's, I mean, obviously it's exaggerated, but it feels like this many times, right? So I think you cannot avoid this. It's a direction that needs to be done. But my point in my book is really, don't forget to actually look first at your behaviors, at the culture, at your skills. I mean, your non-technical skills. You have to actually get familiar with your normal behaviors, to be curious, right? To be creative, to ask the right questions. These are the very basics. If you don't have that and skip that, then you will have a lot of problems with data analytics and AI. It's kind of
because everything needs to be combined. So that's the other area of the triangle, the power skills. So everything on there, problem solving. So you can have all the data, but if you don't know how to resolve the problems, you don't have the mindset to go after the data. Because I can see something. So like I say, if I don't understand the reason behind the data, so it's like you are ignorant about the situation that's going on.
And you need to understand how this whole thing works, right? I mean, data and analytics, obviously you work directly with data, but if someone asks me, oh, why we even need to do this? Because when you bring in AI, you just push a button and it just spits out whatever makes sense, right? Well, yeah, that's great. If you understand that, how that works in the background, right? Then you have to understand, otherwise nobody will believe it, because AI or data analytics will come up with stuff that you probably will not like.
Exactly.
And you have to take that into consideration. If you just dump it because you don't like it, then we didn't make any progress, because that's already happening in many organizations where people just go out, I want to get to a decision to, I don't know, to start this and this project, right? I need an approval for this and this project, right? Then you go to a decision-making meeting and you come up with all your data that you looked up to support your point, that you eventually get the approval. And this is very subjective seeking of data, which is useless, right? Because you didn't even consider then. You have this bias in mind. You look up actually data that only supports your opinion, instead of actually just removing this bias and get a diversity or diverse opinions, right? To come actually with the conclusion, is that project even should I even get that approval? Because maybe that whole project is nonsense.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, Marco, for all the knowledge and information that you are sharing. But I want to end the conversation with a question. If you can tell us, the project managers and the PMO leaders, what are the three things that you suggest us to do in adopting or changing the mindset or leading projects or portfolio programs with data? What will be the three things that you would tell us?
I mean, what I find most important, that what was kind of something that I also discovered for myself, is this whole topic around transparency. So really think about yourself. I mean, you again, project managers, right? And if you really review what are you communicating, what you are hiding, then you will find out a lot about yourself, and what the impact actually is in the end, right? Because I mentioned it actually in a very provocative way. Recently, I said like project managers are all liars. And obviously it's a very harsh, but in fact we are lying, right, many times, because we want to tweak things, we want to progress in our careers, etc., and we paint things sometimes in a way which is not accurate, right? Or we hide things, we don't disclose some things because then it pushes us into a wrong light. So this is all around failure, and the word of failure, which is actually like a bad word, right? It should be actually removed from the vocabulary, I think, in project management, because failures are things that we should learn from. But if you just hide things and don't talk about it, then you will not learn anything, right? How do you learn from something that you're hiding? You're saying, this thing didn't go well, and then comes the mandate from the top, we have to do some post-mortem or something, right? Which, yeah, is great. You get an understanding, but it's usually then always going the direction of blaming, I don't know, technology or processes, whatever, right? While actually we should first look at ourselves, right? So in short, the first thing is really like seeing what are we producing on a daily basis in projects, and what can we produce more, right? In terms of, there's a lot of tacit knowledge which we have in our heads, right? And could actually, at least some of that stuff, we could digitalize it, or we put it actually into our plans or artifacts, etc., right? It doesn't mean that everybody should go off right now and actually do all this. Nobody will actually do this, I'm sure. But the point is,
what will be a second recommendation? So the first one is about transparency. You need to be transparent,
just have honest, a hard thought.
And honest, and you should have integrity also. You don't need to hide anything. Is what it is. That what the data says, that should be. So that's the first one. The second one.
The other thing is really about the data that we're producing, what we're doing with it, right? So be more diligent, right? I mean, just store it, right? I mean, there should be obviously some function. I usually see PMOs like in the lead there to actually put some standards and processes in place that data is actually properly placed and stored somewhere, that there's also some consistent process and consistent use of process. I mean, I actually seen some organizations actually doing a great job to actually make this all very consistent, that everybody uses the same tools, that the data goes in the right place and is being stored and not thrown away. But there are many organizations where it's just random, especially where contractors come in, and we live in a gig economy, right? That's, I believe, what it's called, where everybody does their own thing, right? I just recently heard from someone like, I report my project amber or red or whatever, right? And then next week it will be green. I'm like, how's this all happening? Right? And yeah, this is there's not even a
Magic.
clear definition. We just think this way.
That's
What? There's
magic.
no clear definition. I mean, this is the next big thing, right?
Right.
Red, amber, green, right? It's like a lottery game, and so it's more about thinking how. I mean, the whole thing. How do we deal with data, information? Are we sharing stuff? Are we storing, collecting stuff, right? And yeah, are diligent enough to actually and
Right.
coming back to the first point, also truthful enough, right? Not just putting in some random data in your timesheets because you have to come to 8 hours or something, right? Is that really the case, right? Have you worked on this for 8 hours, or have you worked 5 hours and
Exactly.
the rest work differently, right? So there are all little details to it, which as a wall can mess up
Exactly.
your whole place, right? In terms of the data accuracy, data quality, etc. So if someone really wants to step into that space with data analytics and eventually AI, the first thing to do actually treat data as a real asset, right? It is an asset, right? There's this term, data is a new oil, or data's, I mean, this is very, people should remember this, right? And if you don't follow this, then you will be late to the party eventually, right? And then others are actually upskilling themselves and dive into this, right? And they will get there, and many are already there, and others will think like, what the heck? And yeah, they will just be late to the party, right? That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, Marcos, thank you very much for your time. So it was an honor to have you in this space and sharing the books. Basically, in few minutes, you explain the books. But I would recommend to all the audience that are watching this video to buy the book. So you're gonna learn a lot more about that, all the concepts, all the things that we couldn't discuss here because of the time. But it's a great addition. So as Antonio Nieto is saying, if you want to know about the future of project management, that I don't say the future, you should be doing this today in the present. So you need to get the book from Marcos and Amazon. So I published the link there so people can get it. And also they can reach out to you, Marcos, if they have any questions through LinkedIn.
Sure.
Yeah, you have a website or your company also that can share. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the people in this space in the project management? So any last thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all benefit from this whole hype of ChatGPT. Everybody's all over this, right? I actually use it myself, right? Quite a lot. I think there's nobody who's not using it. And it's great. And it gives us like a push in terms of using data and AI eventually, right? But, one should just remember how that actually came together, right? And how is this actually, what's working in the background, right?
Right.
And that's data, right? So if we want to make something to work in project management, something like ChatGPT in terms of its intelligence, right? Then you have to start with the basics. You have to get your culture straight. You have to get your behaviors right. It is a paradigm shift. That's what it will be. It's not just a tool and you just buy something and next week everything works as usual with the same methods, with the same practices. That's not going to happen. So there is a change, but you have to start really looking at your own behaviors, and then it gets spread around the organization with data literacy programs and so forth.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you very much for your time. So it was a wonderful conversations about leading projects with data. So I learned a lot from you today. So and hopefully the audience also learn from you. And they buy the book, so they continue learning. So I am still reading the book. So good job there. So thank you very much. So we might see you in the next book. So I would like to have you when you release the managing PMO with data. That will be a good thing for people.
Yeah, that's my next project. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, have a wonderful day there. So a nice weekend, because for you it's almost night. Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you very much, Tony. It was a pleasure
Yeah.
to be on your program.
Thank
You
you.
very much.
Thank you very much to you too.